be both challenged and renewed. Amen. Heartache, promise, and invitation. I don't know about you, but over the past couple of weeks, I find myself sighing an awful lot. I think it's my body's way of trying to establish equilibrium. My body's way of telling me, stop and take a breath and center yourself in who you are and in the divine presence. It is a stressful time for all of us as we learn new ways of meeting and of relating to our friends and loved ones, our neighbors, and our colleagues. And as we are inundated with the latest news and statistics about the global pandemic of COVID-19. We continue to worship in spirit, though the venue has changed dramatically. I am grateful to you, the Comer community, for all of the ways that you are reaching out to one another and to your neighbors, embodying kindness, justice, and hope each day in your context. In these days filled with heartache, loneliness, disappointment, and death, we cry out, "Oh God, if you had been here." We see the grim statistics daily. We witness loved ones separated when they are the most vulnerable. We witness the lack of protective equipment for our first responders and medical personnel. We see families struggling with loss of income, with loss of routine, with trying to manage together in closely confined quarters sometimes, and we see all of the strain that that puts on people's relationships. And we cry out, "Oh God, if you had been here. Oh God, where the heck are you right now?" Today's text is filled with heartache too, isn't it? Not just the heartache of Lazarus' death, although that's very significant, but also the particular heartache of Jesus' delay. Whatever his motives, Jesus' delay intensifies the pain of Martha and Mary, both of whom begin their interactions with him by sharing their distress and perhaps even accusation, using the exact same words. "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." This is pain, disappointment, and hurt. And it is something that every single one of us has experienced at some time in our lives. As the story unfolds, however, we see signs of promise. When Jesus initially declares that Lazarus will be raised, Martha assumes that he's speaking about the promised resurrection of all at the end of time. And she gives her affirmation in words that sound like they come out of a first century creed. "Yes, Lord, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." But Jesus means something more, something immediate, contending that the life he offers is not merely an end times promise, but something that makes a difference here and now. The miracle promised earlier in the story comes to fruition when Jesus comes to Lazarus' tomb. And one detects that Jesus is not necessarily a welcome presence. Not only did both sisters confront him with their disappointment, but the crowd also voices their belief that if Jesus had been more caring, he would have come sooner and averted this terrible tragedy. Yet in the very midst of this disappointment and doubt, Jesus surprises them all, first with his command to remove the stone from Lazarus' tomb, and second with his call for Lazarus to come out, and Lazarus does. Now, this is what we would call a miracle, but in John's gospel, it is called a sign. And there are 7 signs in John's gospel. Interestingly enough, the first one is a wedding and the last one is a funeral. I'm not sure what that says about Jesus, but hey, you know. So in John's gospel, these are called signs. And signs are something that reveals the character and commitment of God to God's people. And interestingly, this sign provokes different reactions. Many of those present come to trust in Jesus, but in the verses that follow our text today, this same sign prompts those who oppose Jesus to plot his death. While some are comforted and spurred to faith by Jesus' sign, others are threatened and hardened in their opposition. I wonder if this is always the way it is with God's activity. That is, simply because God's activity will change us, it will comfort some and threaten others. Even the promise of new life, that is, comes only as good news to those who recognize that the old life really is not enough, and it only threatens or upsets those who don't want to change. The passage goes on to one further move, and that is invitation. Even while the action to raise Lazarus from the dead is clearly and decisively Jesus' action, he invites those around him to participate by saying, "Unbind him and let him go." This is the part of the story that really grabs my attention for today, because Jesus didn't have to issue that command, did he? He could have gone over to Lazarus himself and unwrapped him and given him a heartfelt and congratulatory smack on the back for rising from the dead. But instead of lingering in the limelight of this sign, Jesus invites those around to get involved, to play a part in seeing this sign move forward. And I think the same is true for us. We are not only called to be witnesses of divine action in our lives, but also to be changed by what we see, and thereby invited into the ongoing reality of what the divine is doing. At times in our lives, we are the ones who need to be released by God from things that are holding us back. For example, in times like these, maybe I need God to release me from my anxieties that may cause me to hoard food or paper products. At other times, we can be the ones to help the divine to release others. For example, by calling someone on the phone or video chatting with someone, we can be a glimpse of God's peace for them when they're feeling overwhelmed. And I don't know about you, but I've been grateful for those people who have taken the time to call me and talk to me when I've been overwhelmed, especially over the last little while. Today's text is filled with heartache, promise, and invitation. It reminds us that God is present in our heartache. God offers us newness of life in the midst of that heartache, and God invites us into the ongoing work of the one who is indeed the resurrection and the life, even here, even right now. Praise and thanks be to God. Amen. I invite you to please join together